The rain was still falling when I found the gate to my childhood home chained shut, and I stood outside the place where I had spent most of my life, wondering how everything had changed so quickly. My older brother Adrian had returned after years away, and before our family's mourning period had even ended, he had decided that the entire estate belonged to him. My name is Mara Ellison, and I spent 18 years managing my grandparents' lakeside orchard business in northern Michigan after moving back home to help them rebuild what they had inherited from previous generations. I never expected that after their passing, the person who barely visited would arrive with a plan to erase every sacrifice I had made. The Ellison property was not just a piece of land, because it held decades of memories, including the old greenhouse where my grandmother taught me about rare plants and the workshop where my grandfather repaired farm equipment by hand. Every corner had a story, and I knew the business records, customer agreements, and seasonal operations better than anyone alive. Adrian had always believed the world owed him something, and when he left at 19, he promised he would never return to a place he called a forgotten little farm by a cold lake. He moved to the city, chased investments, changed careers repeatedly, and only contacted our grandparents when he needed financial help or advice. My grandparents never stopped loving him despite his distance, and my grandfather always told me that family bonds were complicated but worth protecting. I used to wonder how he could forgive so easily, but after years of watching him, I understood that he believed love was not measured by convenience. The call about their accident came on a quiet Thursday evening, while I was finishing inventory reports in the office beside the packing shed. A delivery driver found their vehicle after a storm caused a dangerous road collapse, and although emergency crews arrived quickly, my grandparents were gone before I could say goodbye. I handled every responsibility that followed, including the memorial arrangements, employee meetings, supplier calls, and the endless paperwork that appears when someone's entire life has to be organized after death. Adrian arrived days later with expensive clothes, a confident attitude, and a stranger's understanding of the place he claimed was his. He walked through the farmhouse inspecting furniture, paintings, and documents as if he were preparing for an auction instead of grieving relatives. When he saw me holding my grandmother's old recipe book, he simply said, "You kept the memories, Mara, but I'm taking the assets." I asked him what made him believe he had control over everything, and he pulled out a folder filled with printed legal articles and property estimates. Adrian claimed that as the eldest child, he had the strongest claim, but I knew our grandparents had spent years preparing their final arrangements carefully. The family attorney, Eleanor Voss, scheduled a formal meeting for the following week, and Adrian acted like the outcome was already decided before anyone entered the room. He told me I should start looking for another place to live because he planned to renovate the farmhouse and sell parts of the property. The next morning, I discovered that Adrian had replaced the locks on the main house and removed my access code from the security system. Standing outside in the early sunlight, I felt like a stranger at the only home I had ever truly known. I moved my belongings into a small guest cabin near the orchard and continued caring for the workers, trees, and equipment because the business could not pause for family drama. While Adrian hosted meetings with potential buyers, I kept records, protected contracts, and waited for the truth to come out. Soon rumors began spreading throughout the community because Adrian had been telling people that I was trying to hide money and prevent him from receiving what he deserved. I refused to argue publicly because I knew facts would last longer than accusations. One afternoon, a longtime customer showed me a message Adrian had sent to several business partners claiming he had already purchased the orchard from the estate. The claim was impossible, but it revealed how far he was willing to go before the official decision was made. I contacted Eleanor immediately and gave her every document I had collected over the years, including financial reports, maintenance records, and agreements signed by my grandparents. She calmly told me that the upcoming meeting would reveal information Adrian had never considered. The night before the estate hearing, Adrian came to the cabin offering me a settlement that was far smaller than the value of my years of work. He smiled and said, "Take the money and walk away." But I replied that some things could not be measured by a quick payment. When the family attorney opened the official documents, Adrian sat confidently believing he would receive everything. Instead, Eleanor revealed that my grandparents had created a detailed succession plan naming me as the person responsible for continuing the orchard's mission and protecting the employees. Adrian looked shocked as the room became silent, because the paperwork showed that the property was not meant to be sold but preserved for future generations. My grandparents had also left him a separate inheritance, but it came with conditions requiring him to respect the family business and its purpose. The biggest surprise was a private letter from my grandfather explaining why he made the decision. He wrote that I had not stayed because I lacked ambition, but because I understood the value of something that could not be replaced. Adrian became angry and accused everyone of choosing sides, but Eleanor explained that the decision was based on years of documented responsibility rather than favoritism. The evidence showed that I had protected the orchard through difficult seasons while he had only returned when he saw an opportunity. Over the next few months, the community watched as the orchard recovered from the uncertainty caused by Adrian's actions. Employees kept their jobs, new projects began, and I expanded the business in ways my grandparents had always hoped for. Adrian eventually apologized, not because he wanted control anymore, but because he finally understood what he had ignored for years. Our relationship did not repair overnight, but the conversation became the first honest one we had shared in decades. I still think about that rainy morning when I stood outside the locked gate and wondered whether everything my grandparents built was disappearing. Now I see that their greatest gift was not the land or the money, but the lesson that commitment and love cannot be claimed by someone who was absent. Years later, the orchard continues to thrive beside the lake, and every spring when the trees bloom, I remember the people who trusted me to carry their dream forward. The experience taught me that true inheritance is not about ownership alone, but about protecting what matters when others choose to walk away. Please subscribe to our channel and share this video with your friends and family. We create entertaining and inspiring stories for our viewers, and your support helps us continue making great content for you.